Hello, so happy to be with you to have this conversation surrounding Mark 12, verse 38 through 44, where we get a teaching from Jesus on turning your life completely over to the Lord. I'm going to go ahead and start in verse 38 and read through verse 40, and that's where our first stop will be. And in his teaching, Jesus said, "Beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in the marketplaces, and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation." Jesus begins our teachings today with an observance and a warning concerning the scribes and the religious elite that surround him in his community. The scribes of the time loved the respect and adoration of the position that they held, and the adoration that the people would give them. These people would be your highly educated people, people who would teach, who have knowledge, people who hold positions of authority in churches. So you're thinking pastors, teachers, elders, professors in seminary, these sorts of people who kind of set themselves above as leaders in the Christian community. And rightfully so in a lot of ways, that they've been trained in this sort of leadership. But one of the dangers that comes with leadership, especially in the church context, is though your leadership is to draw people's attention towards God, sometimes we can take the authority that comes with being a pastor, teacher, professor, and instead allow our egos to grow and draw the glory that's due God to ourselves. And this is exactly what the scribes are doing at the time of Jesus, that they are wearing certain clothes and they're having conversations in public spaces and they're sitting in certain places, all to draw honor to themselves, to draw attention to themselves, to put themselves in a position in which the people around them might be wooed or awed by the knowledge that they hold or the power that they hold. And Jesus comes strongly against them and condemns them for the way that they uphold themselves, that they are supposed to be the godliest people in society, the people who are closest after the heart of God, while their own heart proved that they were living not for God, but themselves. This condemnation of the scribes seems equally pointed to us today as it was back then, and it's not just for teachers or preachers or seminary professors, but us as well, who live out the Christian faith and do so in a very public way, that it can draw attention to who we are. That when we go and do good deeds in the society that surrounds us, sometimes it draws attention to us, that people pat us on the back or say, "You are such a great person." Does this fill ourselves up, or do we in some way reflect that back to God? Are we living out our faith so that others might look to us and praise us? Or are we living out our faith in such a way that people might turn and praise God? Does our faithful living produce glory for us, or does it produce glory for God? Do we do well because we know people are looking at us, or so that their eyes might be drawn towards God? Continuing on in verse 41, and he sat down opposite the treasury, Jesus sat down opposite of the treasury and watched the people putting money in the offering box. Many rich people put in large sums, and a poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins, which make a penny. And he called his disciples to him and said to them, "Truly I say to you, this poor widow has put in more than all those who are contributing to the offering box. For they all contributed out of their abundance, but she out of her poverty has put everything in that she had, all that she had to live on. After Jesus brings the light of the hypocrisy of the religious elite, Jesus then points out in their midst an elderly widow who has gone and placed the smallest of contributions into the offering box. She's made an offering to the temple, nearly nothing in dollar terms, but Jesus reveals that she has given everything that she had. Most people, Jesus says, give from their abundance. When they have extra money, they give some to the Lord. When they have extra time, they decide it's okay to give that time to God. But this widow did not give out of what she had left over, but instead she decided to give everything that she had. We can be at fault just as the religious leaders were. When we give our time, we want to be recognized. When we give a monetary offering, we want our name on the wall. We want there to be a tax write-off. We want people to see us place the check in the box. When we sing praises to God, we want people to see our hands raised. When we help someone in need, we humbly tell everyone we know that we did something good. We donate if we have extra. The widow gave not because it was easy, but because she knew that the money that she had wouldn't get her through the hard times. Only God would get her through the hard times. She did not give because she would receive recognition, but in her sacrifice, God made sure that she would become one of the most famous widows in history. Others had given more money, but few had given their heart as she had. My question for each of us is, multifaceted. Why are you here? What is it that you have to give? What is it that God is asking of you to give? But really, it does distill back to what are we doing here with this relationship that we have with God? Why are you here? Are you here to gain something from God? Or are you here to give of yourself? Are you here for the promises or for the promise giver? Are you here to be praised or are you here to give praise? Are you here to look godly or are you here to be godly? I'm not saying that to gain something is necessarily a bad thing. I think there's plenty to gain by being close to Christ. I think there's plenty of promises that come from being in a relationship with God. I think that God praises us for the things that we do when we participate with Him. And we do hopefully look godly to people. So those are not necessarily bad things, but if we do it for the sake of ourselves and not for God, then I think we may be here for the wrong reasons. That we need to be in proper alignment with all of these things. God needs to be the first in our story, not ourselves. We need to build the muscle of trust as the widow had, trusting not in what we can do, but in what He has already done and has promised to do. May He build in us a trusting and generous heart. When praise is placed on us, may we direct that praise towards God. When money is sent our way, may we place it at the feet of God. When our schedule is full or empty, may we place our time into the service of the Lord. May our hearts be bent to the Lord in all ways. I just want to finish with a story of a widow that I know. My wife and I have a bit of a joke that if my job solely existed to take care of the widows in my life, then I would be one of the most popular guys, because I do really well with elderly women for some reason, for better or worse. And we just seem to get along really well. We play a lot of Scrabble games with one another, and I always seem to be able to make them laugh. But I've always had good experiences, and one of the first experiences as a pastor with a widow was with a lady named Edie, And Edie I had never met. She had never attended the church even when I got voted in, all that stuff. She was never around. She was always a shut-in. And she, a few months into, or about a month into me being the pastor there, she had fallen and went into a nursing home situation where she was going to be experiencing rehab, and gave me the opportunity to go and talk to her and be with her over the next couple weeks as she was going through this process, so she didn't have to go through it all alone. And it was really one of my first experiences with this kind of demographic of people, someone who's an older, elderly woman. And in the long conversations we had about the Cincinnati Reds, but more seriously about her past and her life experiences, I really got to see the heart of Jesus expressed through her and through her life. And I realized in being with her, she had never attended church since I had been there. She had never stood up and sang praise songs since I've been there, obviously. I didn't know whether or not she was tithing to the church, and frankly, I didn't really care. She, as far as I know, wasn't making phone calls to people, doing outreach. I didn't really know any of that, but what I did find out is that she was an avid prayer warrior, and she was one of those prayer warriors that you actually have an experience when you walk in the room, that the room just kind of feels different, that when you walk into that space, there's a peace that comes over you, there's a joy that comes over you, there's a sense that God had been there, that God had touched it. It's like after you it's like you experiencing a super powerful worship service experience where everyone's emotional and you just feel like, I don't know really how to categorize this, except it was just her in a room and it was just us together. And you walk in there and it's the emotion of deep worship was in that space. And I just try to dig that out of the relationship that we had with one another to try and experience the prayer as she experienced prayer, the depth of relationship with God that she experienced. And it made me realize that there's a whole lot more to church than just attendance and how much gets put into an offering plate, because I didn't know if she ever gave monetarily. I didn't know when or if she'd ever attend the church building again, and yet I'm not sure that our church would experience the growth or the health or the joy that it experienced without her praying, without her being there in her bed, spending hours praying for me, praying for my spouse, my wife, praying for the people in the pews, for the worship experience on Sunday, for the kids that would experience the church space. Without her praying, I can't help but wonder if we would have been as successful as we were because of her prayers. That even though she wasn't there presently, she was giving us a very tangible gift, that she was interceding for us with Christ on our behalf to be kingdom workers, to be kingdom builders, and to experience the fruits of a life that's walked with God. And so it's just one of those stories where it doesn't have to be an elderly woman that has this type of relationship. It's not that Christ called her out specifically just because she was a widow, a woman widow, although there is cultural significance to that. She's someone without power, whereas the scribes were someone with power. It's this compare and contrast. But instead, it's a call to all of us to give of our heart, whether it's monetarily or whether it's our energy in prayer, any of these things, to give all of ourselves to the good of the gospel. I hope that story encourages you. I hope that scripture encourages you. Love you. Have a good day.